21 miles. That is all it took to bring the global economy to its knees. Not a nuclear weapon, not a cyber attack, just geography. 230 loaded tankers dropped anchor in the Persian Gulf. 20,000 sailors found themselves trapped. Oil prices spiked immediately. Negotiations, ultimatums, ceasefires, and then collapse again. What strategists had warned about for half a century was no longer theory. This is the Strait of Hormuz, the most critical single point of failure in the global economy. And for the first time in history, it has become a real battlefield. To understand why one narrow strait can push the planet to the edge of catastrophe, you must first understand the body of water it controls. The Persian Gulf is not an ocean. It is a landlocked basin of roughly 240,000 square kilometers, bordered to the west by Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, and the UAE, to the north and east by Iran. And at its only exit sits the Strait of Hormuz. Think of the Persian Gulf as a bottle. The strait is its neck. 6 nations share its coastline, but none of them agree on anything. This is a region where Sunni and Shia Islam have been locked in a cold war for decades, where Arab monarchies and Persian theocracy eye each other with existential suspicion, where American aircraft carriers and Iranian speedboats operate in the same waters, sometimes within visual range of each other. Through the strait flowed between 17 and 21 million barrels of oil every single day, roughly 20% of global consumption, plus approximately 20% of the world's liquefied natural gas, destined for Japan, South Korea, China, and Europe. In geopolitical terms, the Persian Gulf is the circulatory system of the global industrial economy. The Strait of Hormuz is its single point of failure. The world knew this in theory. Now it knows it in practice. The strait at its narrowest point is just 21 miles wide. Within those 21 miles, the navigable shipping lanes are even tighter. 2 lanes, each just 2 miles wide, with a 2-mile buffer zone between them. Supertankers carrying 2 million barrels of crude oil navigate these lanes with zero margin for error. On one side, the coast of Oman, an American ally. On the other, the coast of Iran. When the war between the United States, Israel, and Iran began, Tehran deployed the weapon it had been rehearsing for decades. This was not the decision of a single individual, it was a system-wide response. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the military command, the National Security Council operated as a unified mechanism, executing a strategy written long in advance. The IRGC deployed 3 instruments simultaneously. First, swarm tactics. Hundreds of small, fast attack boats, each armed with missiles and torpedoes, operating at multiple points across the strait at once. Against them, the American fleet is effective but slow. Destroying a swarm is far more difficult than sinking a single ship. Second, naval mines. Iranian mine layers worked through the nights, turning the shipping lanes into a minefield. American minesweepers needed weeks to clear them. Third, coastal missile batteries. Iran's coastline is lined with launch systems capable of striking targets far out into open water. Insurance companies immediately declared the strait a high-risk zone, and most commercial vessels stopped moving even without a direct order. This was not improvisation. This was a strategy refined over years and executed with surgical precision. The message to the world was unambiguous. Iran cannot match the American fleet ship for ship. Does not need to. It only needs to make the strait unusable. The United States spent 4 decades building military infrastructure around the Persian Gulf, precisely to prevent this scenario. The headquarters of the 5th Fleet in Bahrain. Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, the largest American military installation in the Middle East. Carrier strike groups on permanent patrol in the region. Washington's unspoken guarantee to the world was always simple: the strait will stay open. American power is the insurance policy on which the entire system depends. The war revealed the limits of that policy. Iranian missiles and drones struck American bases across the region. Hundreds of service members were wounded. American fighter jets were shot down. And most critically, the strait was closed. Not for a day. For weeks. The insurance policy developed a crack. Iran's approach to the Strait of Hormuz is a masterclass in asymmetric deterrence. One that is no longer theory but documented reality. Tehran did not attempt to defeat the United States in open battle. Iran's command structure, collective, decentralized, built specifically to survive the elimination of any individual leader, deployed a geographic weapon instead. The closure of the strait immediately hit American allies, Japan, South Korea, Europe. Fuel prices rose inside the United States itself. The political cost of the war began rising faster than its military gains. Iran calls this strategy the economy of resistance. The idea is simple: make yourself so deeply embedded in the global economic system that attacking you becomes too expensive, even for a superpower. And here lies the central discovery of this war. Iran does not need to win. It only needs to make victory over itself economically unbearable for its adversary. A closed strait is not a military maneuver. It is a negotiating lever, measured in dollars per barrel. Here is the geopolitical irony that most Western analysts are not yet ready to state openly. If the Strait of Hormuz remains closed or unstable, the United States is the best positioned major power to survive it. America is the world's largest oil producer. The shale revolution fundamentally transformed Washington's energy equation. The United States is incomparably less exposed to a Gulf closure than it was in 1973, or even in 2003. The countries absorbing the greatest damage are China, Japan, South Korea, and India. Begin with India, the player that Western analysts almost always overlook. India is the world's third-largest oil importer. Approximately 60% of its oil imports pass through the Strait of Hormuz. Unlike China, India has no comparable strategic reserves. Unlike Japan, it has no long-term diversification contracts through alternative routes. The closure of the strait hits the Indian economy immediately and deeply, through fuel prices, inflation, and industrial output. And India has been carefully balancing between Washington and Moscow, avoiding a direct choice of sides. The Hormuz crisis makes that balancing act impossible, and forces New Delhi into a position it has done everything to avoid. Now China. Beijing imports approximately 40% of its oil through the Strait of Hormuz. Strategic reserves are estimated to cover several months, but no more. This sounds like a buffer. In reality, it is simply a delayed catastrophe. Every week the strait remains closed consumes that reserve. Every month brings Beijing closer to the moment when it must make a public choice: openly back Iran or openly demand the strait be reopened. And here lies the deep strategic paradox. China, which for years presented itself as Iran's partner, its diplomatic shield at the United Nations, its economic lifeline, finds itself among the primary victims of Iran's geographic weapon. This is why Beijing maintains a conspicuous silence. It does not support the United States, but it does not support the closure of the strait either. China wanted to use Iran as a card to play against Washington, not as a match dropped into its own fuel depot. The Strait of Hormuz is 21 miles wide, but its shadow falls across the entire planet. Iran did not defeat the United States in open military confrontation, but it proved something far more important. A state with an outdated military and a decentralized command structure can inflict pain entirely disproportionate to its military capacity, if it controls the right point on the map. And here is the forecast no one wants to say out loud. Even if this crisis ends, the strait will never be what it was. Iran has proven that geographic weapons work. That closing 21 miles of water can bring the global economy to its knees and force a superpower to the negotiating table on Iranian terms. This means one thing: the next crisis in this region, and there will be one, will begin from a different starting point. Iran's command now knows the price of the strait, and it will not forget. The question is not whether the bottleneck can snap shut again. The question is when, and whether the world is prepared for the possibility that opening it next time will be significantly harder. Hormuz is not the end of the story. It is the beginning. The next chapter is being written right now.